Business activities have been shut down in major cities across the Federation due to the ongoing protest as young Nigerians head to the streets over high cost of living, a crisis in the country, which previously boasted as Africa's largest economy. Now, in Lagos, some protesters took to Ojota, Ikeja, Ejigbo, and Ikeja areas, Isolo areas of the state, in what they called a murder of protesters, according to them. Filling and gas stations, shops, malls, markets remain shut as we speak. Few vehicles are seen on the roads, traders hanging around after shorting their shops to avoid being attacked or looted. We'll continue to monitor this situation. But the Nigerian economy now, which has been on a steady path of recovery, according to analysts, following challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic and new faces of threats. Now, one of it is the nationwide protest, which is ongoing. The protest, again, which is aimed at addressing the rising cost of living and economic hardship, have sparked a debate among stakeholders about their potential impact on the country's economy. Experts say it has the potential to disrupt major sectors of the economy, as well as safety of government assets, which is very important. Well, let's get talking now. A management and financial expert who is also a lecturer at the University of Abuja Banking and Finance Department, Dr. Adelodun Sadrak, joins me via Zoom to talk about this. I also have Mr. Gbolao Olojede, who's a public policy analyst. He would also join me to continue this conversation around what this means for Nigeria's economy. Good afternoon, gentlemen, and thank you for being on the program.
Yeah, good afternoon. Nice to be on the program.
Dr. Adelodun, can you hear me? Good afternoon. I think you need to unmute yourself, Dr. Adelodun. All right, let me start with Mr. Gbolao Olojede. Now, Mr. Olojede, let's start with government policies, which many are talking about now, removal of subsidy and liberalization of the foreign exchange market. Many say this was what all the presidential candidates promised to do. But now this has happened. There was an unexpected fallout. What do you make of the policy move and the fallout of these policies?
Okay. The policies in themselves, I think, are in order. We cannot continue to have multiple exchange rates in the economy. We cannot also sustain the fuel subsidy that we were paying before the removal. However, when such major policy steps are taken, there will be responses from the market. So those responses are things we could have anticipated and then decide, we should have decided, okay, if the market responded this way, this is what we're going to do. If they responded this other way, this is this other thing we're going to do. So how we intended to manage the fallout of those major policy issues seems to have been where part of where things got awry. Now, if you also take the removal of fuel subsidy on one side and you put it together with the currency issue on the other side, is a very potent combo. And the effect on the economy was going to be like this. Why? Because fuel, we're not yet refining in the country. Because we're not refining in the country, we're importing our consumption. So if the dollar, which is used for this importation, to increase dramatically relative to the naira when it comes to exchange rate, then the implication on that fuel price will be major. So there is no doubt that the policies in themselves are right, but maybe the approach to them and how we manage the responses and the consequences left a little, to be desired. But it is what it is. We are where we are right now, and the question should be more of, so what do we do? How do we move forward from where we have found ourselves? If we say the policies are not bad in themselves, maybe a few mistakes here and there. So what do we do? How do we deal with the cost of living crisis that has emerged as a result of those things. That should be the real issue on the table today.
All right, now let me speak to Dr. Adelodun, if you can, Adelodun, if you can hear me. Dr. Adelodun, can you hear me now?
I can hear you clearly now. I can hear you clearly.
Thank you so much. Now, I'd like to go straight to what you think is the implication of this. Well, our reporter told us that flights are still on. We can see activities at the airports where people are checking in and still traveling. But we know that this has disrupted small businesses. And of course, some manufacturers can't go on with production. So what do you make of this and the impact on small business, those that have to live on daily transactions? How do they cope with incidents like this?
That will continue to the next level. However, if we have good policies and we do not have the tools to carry out those policies, the whole thing will still come down to the same process where we are today. Now, let's look at it from this perspective. What is the rate of dollar as of today? Fix a piece, the value of naira to dollars. What can we do to increase the value of our naira to dollars? For instance, the first speaker rightly said, we have crude oil in Nigeria, but the end product of crude oil in Nigeria is being imported to us. They imported our crude oil. In return, we have the final product. We now pay for dollars. So what so doing is actually affecting the value of dollars, and the end result is that the masses on the road, the masses in the country are not finding this easy. They cannot survive because the value of our naira cannot actually do anything commensurate. So therefore, I will advise the current policymakers in respect to this our crude oil that let us be buying this thing with our naira. The more we transact with our naira, the more our naira will get value. And every common man on the street will have access, to all our products in the country.
Now, Dr. Lodo, let me follow up and ask you that. What would you say about President Tinubu's directive on selling crude to Dangote in naira? Because you just talked about improving the value of our currency. You see that also as a step in the right direction?
That's a giant step to take. It is a giant step to take in the sense that the more we start buying crude oil, selling crude oil with naira, it will dovetail to the increase in the value of our naira, and therefore competing with the value of our dollar. It's a giant step to take, and that's a good one. If we can abide by it, our economy will gradually change. Next level.
Okay, let me talk to Mr. Bolaho Olojede now. Now, Mr. Olojede, we've seen moves by government, in all sincerity, PMS shift to CNG, student loan, we've seen government revenue improving. We've seen some positives, actually, in some cases, the shift to getting revenue from the likes of solid mineral sector. We see that drive, but many would say, or analysts like you would say, Rome was not built in a day. Do you think there are some short-term measures that would really impact Nigerians? Because it seems like Nigerians are not ready to be so patient. And some of these policies need time to crystallize.
You see, the problem we have is multifaceted. And when you have such a lot of issues to deal with at the same time, you must be able to prioritize. So when you look at let's look at inflation as a problem in Nigeria, which is a major issue. When you talk of cost of living crisis, you're actually talking of inflation. So let's take inflation. If you look at the inflation curve of Nigeria, if you break it down to the components, you will see the number one leader of that curve, and it is called food. food inflation is the #1 leader of that curve. So in the midst of several things that the government has to deal with, because that food matter has become a major issue, we must deal with it. If we deal with food matter today, I can assure you that we will have dealt with up to 50% of what is causing all this problem. Someone who used to spend 50% of his total earning on food before has now moved from 50% to 90% or 95%. So he has no capacity to consume any longer. He's under tremendous pressure. Health issues may show up. He has to transport himself. He has school fees. He has rent. He has every other thing to deal with. So if we solve just that food and we take him back from his current 95% that he is spending on food, take him back to 40 or to 50%, he has a little allowance. And his capacity to consume other items increases. See, food is so important in the hierarchies of need that it is only after people have dealt with that they start to think of any other thing. So if we don't deal with this matter, it will even affect our capacity to consume other goods. Inventories will pile up with manufacturers. There might be layoff of workers if people are not buying what those people are producing. So it has a chain of effect. So in where we have found ourselves is when the country is dealing with a lot of problems. Of course, you mentioned the issue of CNG. Yes, that is an approach to dealing with the energy problem. Energy has become a problem since that removal of subsidy. So let's have a substitute, which is CNG, and let's drive that process. Kudos, that is fine. So in my opinion, I think we have to move faster with how we implement that. On the education side, I think the student loan idea is a fantastic one. We're all waiting for how that will pan out in the real implementation terms. I know people are already applying. That's a fantastic one. But like I said, a whole lot of problems. Dollar supply is there. The refining thing is also still there. So
okay,
things are there.
Mr. Olojede,
Mr.
Olojede, allow me to interject you. You make your point. Theophilus Selama is standing by for us at Ojota here in Lagos to bring us up to speed with what is happening at the moment on the ground there. Theophilus, what do you have to tell us? What is new?
All right, so the protest is going on, but it takes a different turn from here on. Before we saw the protest started from small groups of cluster people. Before you know it, became larger. There became a situation whereby we had two groups coming in from Ikeja and Ojota, and now those two groups have come together to merge, and we are here. The DJ is playing. They have to set up a DJ stand inside the Ganifa Wemi Park, and so the DJ has been playing songs that sent a message. Songs like "Beast of No Nation," "African China's Mr. President," amongst others. The protesters are saying they are using this to send a strong message to the government of their intentions and plans and what they expect the government to do. And of course, many are believing this will go a long way. But as it is right now, it's a carnival-like situation. The DJ have been playing since, and this is giving the protesters a rejuvenation in the sense that they are dancing and enjoying themselves as the songs are going on and the protest continues.
Theophilus, I also can see that, we talked about daily basis.
Can you please repeat your question? I didn't get that.
Oh, all right. From Ojota, Lagos. We'll try to reconnect with Theophilus and know what is happening around that space. But Mr. Agbola Olojede is still with me and Dr. Adelodun. Mr. Olojede, please, you were making a point there. Let me allow you wrap that up before we continue this conversation. Thank you.
Struggling on many levels. So he's trying to deal with a lot of issues at the same time. And when you have a situation like this, the best approach is to prioritize. And when you look at that priority list, it has been made clear to us by numbers. The inflation numbers shows us that food is the primary driver. It's well above 40%. In fact, the argument is that it is staying 40% because we have not reviewed our bucket and the weight we attach to each of the items in that inflation bucket. If we do it, the belief is that the food inflation we are experiencing right now is much more than that 40%. So deal with food and we will lower significantly the cost of living crisis that people are facing, and the tension on the streets will come down. That is the number one priority. Then all other initiatives that government is pursuing, the CNG initiative and the other ones, there was also an attempt to ensure that the prices of drugs will come down. We've had a situation in which people are even trying to skip their drug dosage because of the cost. So someone who is supposed to take a drug 3 times a day and is saying, maybe I should take it 2 times because of the money. So government was trying to do something in the area of tariff, but let's pursue all those things to logical conclusion, but let's solve that food matter as a matter of urgency.
Food. Let me ask Dr. Adelodun. Now, talking about food, insecurity is one of the challenge here. When farmers can't get to the farms, how would they be able to harvest their produce? Now, this is supposed to be the harvest season, and everyone expects that there should be a bit of drop with regards to food inflation. What is your reaction to with regards to efforts of government to empower farmers to increase production with regards to food security at this time? Dr. Adelodun.
It's okay. Like I said the other time, we will not get to the promised land, which is overnight. It's going to take a gradual process that come along with persistency, that come along with consistency and the power of focus. When you look at what government is doing recently, you will discover that the issue of insurgency in this country has reduced drastically. Therefore, I want to employ the government, the stakeholder, to look into that area very well. That if the issue of insecurity is being tackled properly in this country, definitely people will be ready to go back to the farm since they are secured, and by so doing, we will have enough food to consume, enough food to sell, enough food to actually export. So I want to employ not only the government, the stakeholders across board to look into this case, into these matters of insecurity. If we are able to conquer this insecurity, definitely we are going to improve on our production of our consumable goods.
Well, let me ask Mr. Olojede. Now, part of efforts of government is also recently they have suspended import duties on some and taxes on some essential food items for 180 days. Well, that's about 6 months. What do you also make of this? We also expect from a report that the price of rice should also drop. What would you say about some of these quick interventions?
Fantastic idea, because in the short term, we need to take measures that will allow some measure of importation of food into the country. That is what can happen in the short term. So if tariff is being reduced on certain food-related items, that is good. It will help to solve the problem. There are other problems. You see, when I say food is the major thing that we need to solve, I'm not saying it is easy. It is actually a fairly complex situation, but we must deal with it as complex as it is. Leadership is in itself. It's not about the routine decisions. It's about the tough one and how you deal with tough situations that brings the real leadership up. So one of the complications, for example, is the problem in the Sahel. Now, because the Sahel is destabilized, so you see people coming all the way from Burkina Faso to come and buy grains in Nigeria. Now, if they pay more to the farmer, guess what will happen? The farmer will sell to the person who has paid more. And it doesn't matter that, down here in his own country, that there is even not enough of those things to eat. So all those issues around our yield, issues around fertilizer, farming input, issues around financing of agriculture, that particular space in itself are matters we must deal with to have sustainability. But in the short term, I agree with the government, do something around food importation, do something about curtailing, because if you don't deal with the border issues, people that are coming to buy them, even if you import the food, they will still come inside Nigeria, and that's a tariff that you reduce and make the food cheaper into Nigeria. They will come in from where they are to buy the food and go away. So it's a totality of issues we need to deal with, issues around connecting the centers of production with the centers of consumption. Where are these food produced? Where are they being consumed? What do the roads look like? You know, can we do some things around that so that this? Let me give you a very good example. A couple of weeks ago, I bought a tuber of yam here in Lagos for 10,000 naira. One tuber of yam, 10,000 naira. Last weekend, I was coming from Osun State, and somewhere near Ikire, we saw people selling yam, and we parked and went to price yam. At that location, I bought 10 tubers of yam for 22,000 naira. Each of them were not as big as the 10,000 anyway, but there is a huge gap between the cost per tuber and that one that I bought in Lagos. I was telling myself that, look, if some of the players in that space hear about the price that is going on here, they will come there, they will buy everything up, and that 22,000 that I paid, I will be paying 50 or 60,000 by the time it gets here to Lagos. So there are other intrigues and intricacies around the food space which we must deal with. What must not be argued, or what cannot be argued, that we must solve that food problem if we are going to deal significantly with the problem on the table.
Dr. Adelodun, now, many also argue, or analysts have opined, that this is also a global issue. We see that even UK just got out of recession recent times, and we see other countries grappling with currency stability and all of that across the world, that it's not just a Nigerian issue. But specifically, many are looking at the impact on this part of the world, that's Nigeria. If you are to assess both fiscal now and monetary side, their efforts to complement each other, with what you've seen so far, 1 year or more than a year of President Bola Tinubu's administration, what would you say about some of these policies really and their expected impact on Nigerians? Yes, we know it could take a while, but can we just look at some specifics like what the monetary policy has been doing and the fiscal side?
Okay.
Yeah, honestly.
Okay. Is this for me?
Yes, for you. Yes, for you.
Okay. You start. I like the way you started that particular question. You see, in reality, post-COVID and with the advent of the Russia-Ukraine war, there was a cost of living crisis that was global. It wasn't a Nigerian. As a matter of fact, you have countries like America that was experiencing 30-year all-time inflation at the point in time. In Germany, it was the same way. In Japan, I think it was 40-year all-time inflation. But let's talk about this inflation figure. So when some of these people are saying they have 40-year all-time inflation, you ask them, what is this inflation figure? And they tell you it is 4%. So when you come home here and you talk about that inflation, in certain categories, it might be up to 100% inflation rate that we're talking about. So though it was global, but the impact is more severe in some parts than in the other part. The other thing is that some of the policies, for example, in the developed markets, monetary policies were used to drive down inflation significantly in most of the developed market, and it worked. As we are speaking, those countries are beginning to relax their monetary tightening because the inflation curve has plateaued and is beginning to decline in most of these markets. But the complexion of our own inflation does not lend itself to an effective control by just the monetary policy. So essentially, the nature of our inflation pressure is not one that monetary policy alone can curtail significantly within a short term. So for us to achieve a more effective curtailing of inflation in Nigeria, it will not just be the CBN affair. The fiscal side is important. I'm glad they are beginning to pitch in issues around tariff, for example, that is fiscal. So for them to step into the tariff area, it means that they are already getting conscious of the need for the fiscal side to support what is going on in the monetary side of things to change this inflation problem that we have. And the more of those measures that we have, one of it is this food matter that I'm talking about. The fiscal has a huge role in it. The monetary can also support. If you deal with that food matter, you can take it to the bank, 50% of this problem will disappear.
Yes, Dr. Adelodu, yes, I also want your views with regards to that handshake between, of course, the fiscal side and the monetary side. With regards to policy now, don't also forget, we have the Taiwo Oyedele-led committee working on fiscal policies and tax issues. All of this are to also support the fiscal side. What do you make of that handshake?
Yeah, that's very fantastic. Looking at what the Apex Bank is doing currently in the area of monetary policy, you will discover with me that we cannot get where we are going to overnight. It's a gradual process. Like the first speaker has rightly said, if we are able to increase in the production of our locally produced goods, that would definitely dovetail into our monetary policy in which every other person, both the poor, the middle classes, they will definitely benefit from it.
Dr. Adelodu. Dr. Adelodu,
yeah, with you.
Please, I need to come in now. My colleague is live from Abuja. Let's get updates from him so we continue our conversation here. Sifon Esen, security correspondent, joins me live from Abuja. Sifon, what are you learning? What is new?
It's a peculiar situation, I must admit, coming from the Murtala Mohammed Highway as far as Kubwa down to the event to Dakwa. Dakwa is a border community between Abuja and Niger State. This has gone just beyond protesting. It's more or less like a violent mob has taken over the protest, and they have put up barricades, not allowing free flow of vehicular traffic. And they are smashing vehicles. That is the extent to which we can report and which we have seen. We also came under, such an experience, but, for the assistance of local vigilante and the police, we were able to, scale through and make our way to safety. But it's a peculiar situation, as I reported. All kinds of activities, be it business activities, personal activities are affected. Businesses are shut down, and even those that managed to open shop were forced to close shop for fear that the mob could loot businesses.
What about security operatives now? They're trying to manage this situation. How is that playing out?
Well, we must commend security operatives. From what we have seen, they've applied minimum force or reasonable force in curtailing the situation to the extent of firing tear gas to disperse the irate mob. But as it is, the protesters are defiant, so you see a situation where they fire the tear gas to disperse the protesters, and they pick it up, the canister, and they throw it back at the security operatives. That's the situation we've seen, especially on the popular Murtala Mohammed Highway, also known as Kubwa Highway, down as far as Abuja Kaduna Highway. Now, that's the experience. It's even worse when you get to Dakwa, and from Dakwa you get to Zuma Rock in Niger State. It's a mob. It's taking over the road. Security operatives are having an uphill task managing the entire situation, firing tear gas, appealing to them. Everything has fallen on deaf ears. The mob is defiant.
All right, Sifon, we'll get back to you again for updates. Please stay safe. Dr. Adelodu, there you were making a point with regards to that handshake. You heard my colleague there from Abuja. You are also in Abuja. If you like to comment on that too, but let's wrap up on that aspect of that handshake, which is important for inclusive growth that is expected of government.
Yeah, if government will continue in this new policy, I bet it with all Nigerians that in a matter of time to come, things will change drastically for good in Nigeria. That's number one. Number two, the value of Naira will definitely rise because now we cannot depend on those things we are able to produce by ourselves. But without that, I can bet it with you, we go nowhere. Like you said the other time, that's fine. Globally, we are having issues. Japan, Germany, UK, America, all of us they're having different issues. But I keep telling people, you cannot compare developed countries with developing countries. Where they are today, we've not even gone there. So we must take conscious effort to make sure that all this policy, this current government puts in place, we work dogmatically about it so that we'll get to the end of it. And I believe in a short while, Nigeria will experience a renewed hope sincerely in this country.
All right, let's take a break, gentlemen, and we'll come back and we'll continue this conversation. You're staying with TVC News, where we're bringing you up to speed with economic implications of this protest and, of course, live feeds from across the Federation. We'll be back, and this will continue. Stay with us.
Why you go put here that people?
Guys, they are from.
That is the leave this one. If they are no return, why you go put here that? Just try to be careful. That one be the foolish.
Right there, you're still with us, where we're bringing you up to speed with the nationwide protest. And I have a lecturer from University of Abuja, Dr. Adelodun Sadrak, who is joining us, is with us via Zoom. And Mr. Bolan Olojede, the public affairs analyst, is also there. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for standing by with us. Dr. Adelodun, again, I'm going to start from your end. We also see that this protest in some states, particularly, I think, Imo, Enugu, some eastern states, the turnout seems to be very low. Nothing not even happening in some cases from what we've seen with our correspondent reports. But on the other side of it, we see that this protest, some places gaining momentum, some places the turnout not really so commendable. What do you make of this mismatch, kind of?
On this note, I would like to say this. all Nigerians that everybody is feeling the hard time. So those states that seems to be calm, they understand the fact that things are very hard, not only in their state, but across the board. And let me tell you the truth today, by protesting, we will not get anywhere. Fine, constitutionally, we have right to protest. But the truth of the matter is this: if we enter into dialogue, and with the way this government is being run, I believe with time, we will get to the promised land. It will not happen overnight. I keep telling anybody that cares to listen to me, it's a gradual process. So look at the states where we have protests today. You know, when you look at the turnout, you discover that people didn't come out. I came from my house today. I'm in my office. So the truth of the matter is this: we all know the truth, and the truth is the fact that we are experiencing hard time, and we believe that with time, with these policies that are in place by this current administration, we believe that with time, everything will calm down. It's a gradual process, no doubt about it. That is my view on that.
I also have situation report from Akwa Ibom State here. Residents ignore nationwide protest, go about their lawful businesses. No sign of protest is observed in the state's capital. That's Akwa Ibom State. Prior to the day, the governor had addressed a cross-section of relevant stakeholders on the need to shelve the protest. Now, the day began with heavy rains that lasted for hours. And as at the time of filing this report, that's from our correspondent, residents were seen going about their lawful businesses. And this is really very important. Markets are operational. There is business operations, major streets, Akpa Road, Ikodekpene, commercial banks are also observed to be closed. But businesses are on in Akwa Ibom State. So we see, just like what Dr. Adelodun just talked about now. But let me ask you, Mr. Olojede, very recently, President Bola Tinubu signed minimum wage bill into law, 70,000 naira from 30,000 naira. Clearly, that's above 100% increase from what we used to have before. And that was done as fast as possible. So let's also look at the implication of this, because in this protest, I'm not seeing anywhere where workers are coming out outrightly to say they are in support of it.
Okay. I think it was a fair deal on the improvement in the minimum wage. We went all the way from 30,000 to 70,000. It might even be a record increase. I'm not sure there has been like a 133 or thereabout percentage increase in minimum wage at any time in the past couple of decades. However, salary, the minimum wage is not just about the absolute amount of naira that is made available to people. It is also about what that amount of money can purchase. So while that is a great leap, one other thing that might support that leap is the food matter that I mentioned. So that guy who used to maybe get 100,000 naira salary before is now getting 90 or whatever it is with the consequential adjustment and the rest of it. But if what he will eventually spend this money on is made to become more affordable, then the money will have even much more value than that 130% increase that we're talking about. So I will still say kudos on the increase that we have seen in the minimum wage. Of course, that might also exert a little bit of inflationary pressure when it is implemented. It has its own little cons by the side. However, to give it the full benefit, which will further depress all the pressure that we're talking about, is just take one of the items. I'm not talking of many items. One, and that item I will always recommend is food. When you deal with it, the value of that 70,000 will be as if you have given them the 250,000 that they were initially asking. They will be able to consume not just food, but other items that are being made available in the economy. These are the things that will help us tremendously get out of the cost of living crisis that we have found out.
Dr. Adelodu, now, let me ask you the next question. But before that, let me tell you, look, live updates from Kaduna State. Security forces in Kaduna have arrested about 25 protesters following clashes that erupted when demonstrators attempted to block the road leading to the government house. Weapons, including jackknives and live ammunition, were found on the protesters. Earlier, police officials claimed that the protest had been infiltrated and taken over by band members. A lot of updates here. Tear gas was used to disperse protesters who were determined to break into the government house. We're bringing you up to speed with all of this, and our correspondent would be joining us. Dr. Adelodu, we now see that in some cases, they started destroying some facilities. We see burnings in some cases now, and this is what we talk about, the negative effect of protest. Like when some people come out, to let Nigerians know or let the government know, have their grievances known. But at the end of the day, we have challenges like this happening. People breaking into shops in some cases, people looting small businesses in some cases. How do we marry this together? At the end of the day, it becomes a loss for both sides. No one wins.
That's very correct. The truth of the matter is this: most of people that are instigating this protest, they are doing it with their own personal motive, and in which the motive is not only to fight the government policies, but the motive is to make sure that things are destroyed, to make sure the system and the structures are destabilized. However, on the long run, just like you rightly said, it is the masses, the common men on the streets that strive to get their daily food that will suffer for this. And that is why I keep shouting, telling people, we can protest, but if we must protest, let us do that peacefully. In the other way around, the best bet to achieve anything in life is through dialogue. People in government, they are human beings like us. They were once in the street like anybody. But today, they are in government. So when you talk to them, they will listen to you. Now look at what is happening in that state right away. The truth of the matter is this: before now and in the evening, another things will have happened there, because people will capitalize on what is happening there to loot all those properties there. So I want to encourage those people over there that they should take something to take a step and stop what is happening there, because before it leads to another thing entirely. So we don't need it. If we need anything, let us protest peacefully. It is our constitutional right. But after that, we are still going back to sit down on a round table and discuss this is what we need, this is what we need, this is what should be done. Like my first person said the other time, he talks about 7,000 naira salary. The truth of the matter is this: as long as that 70,000 salary is on board, a lot of prices of items will skyrocket. So we still come down to the round table, to the same thing where we are complaining about. So I believe strongly that the best thing we can do is to actually sit down with people in government and see what we can get out of this mess. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lojede, let's look at some of the demands now, demands specifically. And one of it is to revert pump price and, of course, electricity tariff. We know what's happening with Band A's and other bands since there was a review by NERC of electricity tariff. And some would say, well, they prefer to pay more if they have steady supply. Some say, no, this is too high, we can't pay. And mixed reactions, of course. So how would you react to that, considering the energy market? You know the politics in that market too. Cost-reflective tariff issue has been on for such a while, and now we are at this point. So how feasible do you see some of this happening?
I'll first speak to the fuel price matter. That is an impossible demand, and it is one of the dangerous parts of the protest. The demands of the protesters have to be something that is realistic. I have seen certain placards today saying, take fuel back to 100 naira. That is a grand self-deceit, and it's a way of perpetuating the protest forever when the demands are impossible demands. As we speak, there is already subsidy on that PMS. And it is easy to figure out whether there is subsidy or not. We are talking of an imported product. When you are importing product, that product cannot remain around the same price when your dollar is 600, when your dollar is 1,000 to a naira, or when the dollar is 1,600. If you see that happen, the dollar rate is going, the exchange rate is going up and up and up, you know. I think it stabilized a little bit around 1,500, 1,600. But it was going up, but the price of that imported product was not going up commensurably. Then it's an indication that there is even an element of subsidy already as we speak. So when people say take it back to 100 naira, it is an impossible demand. Rather, I would have loved to see a demand that is saying fast track the CNG initiative as a substitute to cushion the effect of the PMS price. I would like to see a demand that say support the Dangote refinery and other local refineries, including the public refineries, to succeed. Those are possibilities, those are possible, and they will have positive effect on our economy. So let's look at those things that are possible and would help to transform the economy and focus on those as demand, rather than asking for the impossible as a demand. Then the issue of energy costs. Incidentally, both at home and in the office, I am on band A. My experience might be different, and I'm not going to use my experience to, I'm not going to extend it to what my expectation of all the other people. For me, I'm better off on band A. I am better off, and I'm okay to pay the charge on band A because I have done my numbers, and it is more costly for me to run generator. As simple as that. Apart from that, is the peace that has descended on my neighborhood since we were put on band A. The noise from generator. In fact, my neighbor's generator, brings up so much smoke that my guest toilet is permanently stained. The porcelain, everything there has element of smoke in it. Since band A, all that has disappeared. My generator, I'm sure if I try to put it on now, it might not start because nobody has used it for several months. So for me, it is possible. I'm not extending that to everybody. There might be people who feel otherwise. But I would rather have the light and pay for it. That is a personal opinion on the band A. And I feel the same way in the office as well. I prefer that thing than running those humongous fuel guzzler, continuously for the purpose of business.